I'd just like to now welcome the next speakers. And this is a collaboration I personally know goes back at least 12 years, perhaps longer. And it's between archaeologists and the Wajarri of the Weld range. And the speakers are, or the co-authors are, Colin Hamlett, Carl Hamlett, Brendan Hamlett, Brian Jones, Viviene Brown, Vicky, Winton, Annie Carson. There are 7 people. I don't think all of them are going to speak. That mic as well. But sorry about that. Hopefully you heard that. But essentially we've got 4 speakers coming up right now. We've got Carl and Brendan Hamlett and Vicky Winton and Viviene Brown. And this is Vicky Winton to start off with. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for inviting us to talk today. Really appreciate the opportunity to tell you about the project that we did at Weld Range from 2013 to 2015. That was the Weld Range Web of Knowledge project. And the project was federally funded from the Indigenous Heritage Programme, which is no longer in place. So that is that we got into the last round of the Indigenous Heritage Programme. And Weld Range is located in the Midwest region in the Murchison. It's, I guess you'd say, on the edge of the Western Desert. And if you go halfway up the Great Northern Highway, get to Kew, turn northwest and go 50 kilometres, you'll see the Weld Range rise on the hills, rise on the horizon in front of you, and you've got the nationally heritage Wilgie-Mia or Dhuritha Aboriginal ochre mine at the heart of that range. And but to tell you about the importance of Weld Range in the country, obviously we'll hand over to Brendan and Carl Hamlett.
My name's Brendan Hamlett. Anyway, the painting painting up there is at the Weld Range. The bottom one is they call it Daraganabana. That's where they burnt wood on a rock, and they broke it and broke it and broke it until they found the water there. That's man-made. The other one up there is natural, the rock hole up the top, and that's where it got a lot of art engravings around that area. It's all part of the Weld Range, and Weld Range is one of our very strong cultural places for the Wajarri people. Dhuritha is where they used to trade ochre for that country all the time, to distribute all around Australia, to north, south, east, west. I'd just like to pass you over to Carl for a minute, because morning, people. My name's Carl Hamlett. I'm one of the traditional owners in part of the Weld Range. And when Brendan talking about Dhuritha, that's the oldest ochre mine in Australia. It's over 40,000 years old, and we tried it, and we've done testing on it, and it's far back over in Queensland. It's been documented, and we got carvings on all the Wagga rock and all that, and it's all there, all over the range. We've got 70 kilometres, and we've done a lot of stuff with these archies, doing this Weld Range Web of Knowledge. And most important thing, the best thing for me, is we've done a cave. It's only a small cave. We've done an excavation, and we found a yellow bitty mini. That's an emu egg, over 30,000 years old. And it was only so far deep with all charcoal and all that. This thing we've been doing, and we've got a lot of sacred sites here in the Weld Range. And that's why we still trade the ochre now. And we still use it when we do our cultural stuff up in Roman, with Winton. We still practice our law culture. We do it every year we go there. That's all I want to say, and I'll pass it back over to Vicky and Vivi.
Lovely.
Thank you very much.
So for me, coming over to Western Australia in 2008 and heading out to Weld Range for the first time in 2009, following in the footsteps of Annie Carson and Sean Winter, who were the first archaeologists from Eureka, UWA, to go out there in 2007. Well, I was just completely blown away, not only by the archaeology on the ground, but by the interaction with traditional owners who knew so much about their country and could educate me during that early time in my time in Western Australia. So that was fantastic. And I think one of the important things in setting up the project was that we were engaged by the Aboriginal people directly rather than engaged by the mining proponents. And Claire Smith and co-authors last year published a paper called Pursuing Social Justice Through Collaborative Archaeologies in Aboriginal Australia. And they concluded, for non-Indigenous archaeologists, the challenge lies in the shift from working with Indigenous peoples to working for Indigenous peoples as part of a process in which social justice outcomes are a product rather than a byproduct of archaeological research. And I think, yeah, that structural setup of working for, I mean, literally working for, and then, yeah, that's carried on through into our research collaboration. And I think that's where, was there something else I was supposed to say here? Nope. And Viv is now going to tell you about the project setup.
Smooth. Okay, so I'm Viv Brown. I was a consultant arc at UWA when Eureka was up and running, and I suppose I was out there not long after Annie finished doing surveys. So I started doing surveys out in the Weld Range in 2008, and we didn't stop till 2013, and then I've obviously been back there since. So the thing that you're confronted with when you come to the Weld Range is a ridiculous amount, just an amazing amount of archaeology. And so as a consultant, you spend a lot of your time desperately trying to find site boundaries and come up with management strategies. And while that's amazing, the challenge that we were facing by 2013 is that the most culturally and archaeologically significant places remained little known. So we had boundaries for them. And the guys had been incredibly generous in taking us to these places and letting us wander around and just admire in awe at the really stunning archaeology. You know, we're talking about those really important rock art sites or those big stone arrangements, or even something as significant as Thuaretha, which I do not say properly and have just garbled. The other thing was that Wajarri had actually had quite a bit of success at having these really outstandingly significant places protected in mining agreements. But they were concerned for the future, and certainly I shared their concern, that these places weren't on the Aboriginal Heritage Register in some instances. So every time a new mining company came to town, they were going to have to start from scratch again, start that renegotiation process again. So as Vicky mentioned, we got Indigenous Heritage Program funding in 2013. And probably the primary aim of that was to simply go to these places and document why they were so important. What was it that made these culturally significant places so significant? We also wanted to start that process of understanding what was needed to manage these places moving into the future. We wanted to get them registered on the Aboriginal Heritage Register for the state. Our Wajarri colleagues wanted to know a little bit more about archaeological method and theory, so that when archaeologists came out and started talking about use-ware or archaeobotany, they actually knew what we were talking about and what they could learn from that. And finally, and probably most importantly, we wanted to raise public awareness about the Weld Range in general and these important places, because we wanted someone, if they did a Google search even of the Weld Range, to actually get a result and not just, oh, near Kew. So let me change slides. In any project like this, and as you will hear from most of the projects today, there are a huge number of outcomes, and some of them are expected, some of them are unexpected. And as you can see from the slide above, we've sort of picked out some of the highlights. But what Carl and Brendan and Vicky have already said quite eloquently, they've started to talk about some of the things that meant the most to us, what personally meant the most to us. So for me, it was actually having an opportunity to explore some of the connections between places. You know, talking to Carl, talking to Brendan, talking to Brian, no place in the Weld Range was ever isolated. It was always connected to other things, whether it be Thuari Thar or whether it be a rock hole nearby. And so it was such a pleasure to actually get to go to places and start to investigate those connections. Certainly as a consultant, as I'm sure many of you feel, you end up so focused on individual places and you rarely get to look at the landscape as a whole. So just one of those connections that I'm talking about was, you know, we've ended up finding that stone from a really important quarry called Ariela's Quarry. So we were finding bits of chert to the north, to the southwest, to the southeast, at other important, significant places that was visually similar to the chert from Ariela's Quarry. And what it was sort of a physical example of what the Wajarri people were telling us the whole time, of the pathways through the landscape and how people were moving from one spot to another, which is just nice to see, to be honest. So should Carl, did you want to say, or Brendan, did you want to say anything more about the highlights, or should we let Colin, the senior traditional owner for the area, have the last word? Yep. How does, do you know how to make that work?
Yeah. Yeah, there was one thing that I'd forgotten to say, which was, doesn't matter.
It's going now.
Provide enough evidence that these places should make the grade to get put onto the permanent register and protected.
Well, I think we all thought that. To get under the permanent register, but you know, permanent register, there's no permanent register, really. The wording is permanent, but if they can legislate any time to take that permanency away.
So does this project have any value?
There's a lot of value for us. For us, it has a lot of value. You know, we find that people out there know, few people are letting people out there know what's happening. What is here that's never been seen or told about before. And it's just lucky that, you know, so it's a good time with young men to let you know about all this stuff. That I could pass on to the rest of the people.
It's interesting listening to you talk. If you were in a situation having to trust the government or trust the company, who would you?
The company, because I've got a written guarantee with it, and if they screw up, I will be able to sue them. The government can't do jack shit to them. There's an evidence.
I think that's quite sad, but I can see what you mean. You know, the government is there to protect negotiating with a Chinese company than you do trying to ask the
100%.
Western Australian.
100%. I don't trust the government for one thing. Like I say, this thing, they say to another deal. But the Chinese haven't made an agreement, they can't change the agreement. Because we've already signed the agreement that's between me and them. And I make a couple of money too. I will make a couple of money, as I've done with the heritage stuff.
Cool. In the last couple of seconds, no time. The thing that I'd forgotten is that Wajarri had applied to have the whole of the range nationally heritage listed. In the end, it was only a small part of the range around Weld, yeah. And but the reality is, when you look at it as an archaeologist, yes, it is one big site. Really, it's very hard to find gaps between the artifact scatters and all the other site features across the area. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.